I just noticed. Feet hungry, the Buddhist temple church is in the street. We have a love of the Buddha, Sariputta, I'm not sure it's Overmore, and one of the other ones, pieces. Here in the city, we give them music. Who's who?
Okay, welcome everybody. Today is the October 1st, Upāsika Day, and the theme is around meditation, and for our Upāsika days we do sometimes Sutta study, sometimes social, sometimes things that are, have a different use in terms of day-to-day life. And this is actually around sort of directly addressing meditation. And then the topic is around attachment, and so that the aspect of attachment and its effect on the mind, how to deal with it, how to work with it, and and of course, when we say meditation, it's also the reality that we can't separate out the rest of our life. That if we only meditated, then we wouldn't have to deal with certain things like attachment. Is that open?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure. So now we hear the buzzing of the Okay, there we go. Thank you. So when we're talking about meditation, we can't exclude the effect that something like attachment has on our day-to-day life, because every time we sit down to meditate, our day-to-day life is it's right there. You can't escape it. So that these themes go back and forth. So understanding the aspect of attachment in our daily lives also has a when we're able to understand it more clearly than when we do sit down to our meditation, then we have a much clearer ability to be peaceful, or to free the mind from the things that are obsessing it. And so that as when we think of the list that the Buddha gives of attachment, they come around certain themes of sense desire, views, practice and precept, assumptions of self. And then they start branching out into the different ways that it manifests, and the root is this type of attachment in whatever way, shape, or form. Then it ends up with attachments to, the concern of our health, our job, and home relationships, and children, pets, they're all sorts of things. And, when we recognize, I think with attachment, one of the things is, seeing the different translations. The Pali word is upadana, and attachment, clinging, grasping. Ajahn Jeff uses sustenance, which is interesting. We attach to something or cling to something, assuming we're sustaining ourselves in a. I think it's a really good translation. Needs to be fleshed out a bit, but that sense of we're actually trying to sustain ourselves, to derive sustenance from something, like say sense desire, and attachment to sense desire. We're trying to gain some kind of pleasure, gratification, satisfaction, and it's not as if it's not pleasurable, but then the nature of attachment is that it keeps moving, looking for another object. So that this is why it's so important to understand how this attachment and clinging, upadana, works. And also another aspect of say, upadana is this sense of clinging or attachment to things as me or mine. There's this behind all of it. And I think that's your fundamental delusion, is we're opting for, trying to make claims of identity around it. So we identify with with sense desire, or we identify with particular views, opinions, stances that we make. This is my view, and of course I am right. And when somebody has a contrary view, then what is mine is threatened, and we're off balance. So that there is that, and that's a way to be, especially in terms of meditation and investigation. Is something? Are we attached? Do we have clinging to something or other? And one of the ways to recognize that is there's this sense of me and mine, and so the sense of I that's involved. That makes it very clear, or much more clear, that okay, this is attachment. If it's just sort of whatever, then it's a very different feeling. Also that when we consider the Buddhist teachings on attachment and relinquishing of attachment, this is a practical tool for freeing us from suffering. So the teachings are there to give us kind of the skill and ease of how to live in the world. So that really understanding how we create suffering and how we can free ourselves from it. So that the avenues of attachment are a good point of reflection. And it's not that when it comes from, which is another view, I can't have any attachments to anything. If I'm going to be a good Buddhist, I shouldn't have any attachments whatsoever. I've got to free myself from all attachments, and basically you can't do anything, because you're attached. This just is. But it's really, I think it's really helpful and important. The Buddha is always pointing to suffering, cessation of suffering. That's the foundation of the teachings, and also that in the the scriptural language, there isn't opposite or opposite correlation to upadana and samadana. And that's when one holds things rightly. So, like in the Thai language, when you take the refuges and precepts, samatansin, so it's like you determine to take, or you determine to pick up, or you determine to, you make a commitment to. So it's like holding things rightly. So, so that there is that's another lens of, like, upadana is like holding things wrongly, creating a problem, making suffering, making a mess out of it. And samadana is holding things rightly so that they're being a benefit and supporting one's aspiration for peace and happiness, well-being. So I think it's important to realize that there's these different lenses to be. How do we hold things? And this is something that, say, Ajahn Chah gave a nice example of say, when you go into a dark place or it's nighttime, especially when you're out in the forest here, you hold on to a flashlight. You don't let it go. You say, it's not going to be attached to this flashlight, and you hold on to it, and because it's appropriate to hold on to it till you're out of the dark, and you get off the trail, because you're sort of rolling down the hill because you're not attached to your flashlight. I mean, it's so that samadana, you're holding it rightly, you're holding it correctly. And, do you have clinging? Do you have upadana? Well, no, it's just a flashlight, and you're just using it for a useful purpose. So that applies to that. You start extrapolating from that. That's what you do with, say, like right speech, right action, right livelihood, right relationship to the world around you. You have to pick it up and hold it correctly, hold it rightly. And same with meditation. You've got to pick up a meditation object and hold it rightly. Because we can hold it with clinging and attachment. I've got to pay attention to my breath, and I can't let anything else come in and intrude. And you wind yourself up and create all sorts of tension and tightness, and mind doesn't become peaceful. So that understanding that sense of upadana, attachment, and samadana, how to hold things correctly, how to hold things appropriately. So that's when we're reflecting on on attachment or on clinging, then it is important to sort of say, well, there is this, say, option to clinging, and that is holding things correctly. So that Ajahn Jeff has a nice, just the way he says, saying, well, one is that the whole book of the Mind Like Fire Unbound is mostly all about clinging and freedom from clinging. And because one is one of the aspects of the image of fire is that in order for something to continue burning, it's like fire is said to be caused by the excitation or agitation of the heat property, and then to continue burning it has to have sustenance and upadana, and its relationship to its sustenance is one of clinging or dependence, entrapment. And so then, this is where we start to, one is this unraveling of this clinging, and then the Buddha pointing to that there's, the mind has 4 forms of clinging, and of course these are just ways of flagging categories, and of course you can name your particular preference for clinging and how it manifests, but how you proliferate out from there. But those are certain trajectories. So clinging to sensuality, clinging to views, clinging to precepts and practices, and clinging to doctrines of the self or assumptions of self. And then he says, in each case, the clinging is the passion and desire the mind feels for these things. To overcome this clinging, then, the mind must see not only the drawbacks of these 4 objects of clinging, but more importantly, the drawbacks of the act of passion and desire itself. Just that kind of that compulsion that we have to have. It has to be this way. I need this. I have to be a certain way. That compulsion is that passion behind the clinging. So I mean, it's hard to separate them out completely, but there is a certain sense. And of course, the mind does that by just following the path of practice that the Buddha lays down, and it's a virtue of concentration, discernment. It's a virtue provides the joy and freedom from remorse that are essential for concentration. Concentration provides an internal basis of pleasure, rapture, equanimity, and singleness of mind that are not dependent on sensual objects, so that discernment can have the strength and stability it needs to cut through the mind's clingings. Discernment functions by viewing these clingings as part of a causal chain, seeing their origin, their passing away, their allure, their drawbacks, and the drawbacks of their results, and finally, emancipation from them. So I'm starting to see things in their context. So that's kind of an overview. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
What's the seeing the allure part? Like what's?
Well, what's the draw? What's the draw? What's the pull? What's the assumed pleasurable aspect, or what is the pleasurable aspect? Because it's that's what, say, like sensual objects are there. There is a very real pleasure that we get from them. But there's another side to it, unfortunately. But there's an allure there, and the same with like views. It's just really the allure of having views and opinions, having a really clear, strong view. I'm right. They're wrong. I mean, that's very attractive. Who wants to go, oh, I'm wrong, I'm all wrong again. We prop up our views, and there's a certain security comes from that. Yeah.
How do you deal with relationships, attachment to relationships? And particularly, I'm going to possibly be losing my dad. He has cancer.
Uh-huh.
My attachment to my father,
Yeah.
possibly may not be here next year. So,
Yep.
how letting go of an attachment like that?
Well, I mean, one is getting it in balance, in the sense that, like, letting go of attachment isn't a negating. Oh, like, well, he was just a, 4 elements, blah blah blah. That's really not what. It's not realistic. It's not useful. I think one is the the attachments that we have. It's helpful to recognize the kind of pain that we have in not accepting, not being willing to accept, or being fearful to accept the reality of because the reality is we all can, whether it's our parents, and the parents, they provide this incredible basis of stability in our life, and so that's our kind of a anchor post for most of us. But it's for us, and we don't sort of think in terms of, well, when all of us were born into this world, we didn't come with this warranty. And so then it's realize, okay, we have very uncertain due dates, and in order to really not waste our time or not be forgetful of our duties and say the blessings that come, then we need to be alert to that, and so that it's not part of it, of course, is that reflecting in those ways, just to, all right, one assumes that solidity and continuity, and but that's like our bias. But then when we're faced with separation, then sometimes it's really helpful to, paying attention to that, but then paying attention to okay, how can I really express gratitude properly? How can I really give support in a way that is both helpful to, say to my father, as well as helpful to me, to be able to start this process of being comfortable with that reality and not being regretful or remorseful. Yeah, right.
They're talking about loss.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a theme throughout my life.
Yeah.
And chaplaincy work, and there's the losses, like sometimes, there's no date, it's going to happen. And then there's sometimes the losses that also happen in this life that had circumstances around them,
Mm-hmm.
that influences in certain ways that, are these extra add-ons.
Mm-hmm.
And how that, the mind that's understanding, but also the mind that gets caught when these extra add-ons are involved in, losses.
Yep.
Again, knowing loss of my niece, loss of my goddaughter, loss of, parents, friends, someone through alcohol, someone through other things, people doing, and there's these, it's like I'm working, it's like sometimes I have this practice, they say, yeah, here's the clear mind. I know things are going to be death. And then there's these other pieces that just get so attached to it, and other influences that others, then it brings up, a heated passion of like, how did this happen? And who did it? And it's just like, just working with it at times is clear, and other times it's like, feel like it's like just knocking me over with a sledgehammer. And how to just kind of, I'm just trying to keep working with the knowing it'll happen. And yeah, I can even teach this, like, yeah, it's going to happen to all of us, but it's like, boy, it gets convoluted. Those losses aren't so simple at times. There's a lot of things that go into them.
Well, there's a lot, yeah. Yeah, and there is a lot of things that go into them, and especially when it happens to me, then it's different when it happens to somebody else. So then, and that's important to. So like when you hear especially in your case where you're, say, like chaplaincy, when you hear stories of people and you're with people, and then it doesn't have the same impact of when it's real down home and personal when it's me that's feeling it and experiencing it. So, which in itself is a really helpful reminder of, oh, there's this dukkha, is this sense of, again, that I, me, and mine that we inevitably function from. But that's that's why the Buddha comes back to that as a huge source of dukkha, and how to be able to question that is really important. Which doesn't mean, again, negating it. It's really it's important to recognize it's that, again, how do we hold things rightly? What can I pick up that is and pick up and hold in a skillful way, so that it's a benefit to myself and others, rather than, say, picking up and holding and clinging in an unskillful way, which is upadana, because that ends up in suffering. So these are reflective devices. Okay. Yeah.
So I heard the word samadhansin all my life, but never know that it means to hold it rightly.
Yeah.
So is there a way to hold the sila wrongly?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's, and we'll get into it, but when we say, okay, I mean, there's all sorts of ways to hold it wrongly. I mean, it's just, one, if I don't keep these precepts, and I'll go to hell. If I don't hold them in exactly this way, then there's going to be some terrible disaster. I've got to get it right. And then we get really nervous and tight about it. We don't see it as a tool for freeing ourselves from suffering. We see it as a kind of a mandate that we have to fulfill, and we got to get the precepts right. We've got to get the refuges right. I've got to hold to the Buddha. So then it becomes a belief system. And as long as it's a belief system, it'll never free you from suffering. Same with precepts. It's like, holding on to the precepts of, something happens that is out of your control. That's like when I went back to visit family. And then there was all sorts of relatives and friends and people around and whatnot, and it's kind of they're doing their thing. And of course, there's alcohol all over the place, and I'm just trying to be a monk, you know. You know, and you know, just try to engage. But that, you know, and then I had this a can of juice, and so okay, I've been drinking this juice, and it tastes kind of funny. You know, and it's I don't know. Well, it was with clamato. I don't know if I do clamato, but it's a mix with vodka. And I look at the contents. God, it's vodka. Take this away. So there was lots of people who were willing to take it. But so okay, so there's. You know, if I cling to my precepts, oh my God, I'm such a failure because this. But you know, I'm just going to be tainted for the rest of my life because I've drank. You know, it's just you sort of realize no, the precepts are there to, and mostly when I go back to visit family, they do protect me. But in that case, it didn't. So, you know, it's not a big deal.
One other thing came to mind about that is I think it's easy also with precept to say, well, there's no way that I can keep all these precepts, so I better just not take them in the first place.
Right. Yeah. Yes, which is another thing. Yeah. So it's kind of clinging to precepts in an opposite way, where sort of I've got to get them absolutely right, or I won't take them. And then so you don't take them, and well, you get the benefit from that. You know, so you don't sort of work with it and sort of see how do these precepts work? How do I understand them? What benefit do they? How do I hone my wisdom so that I can be working with using them skillfully? So.
Apropos of views and opinions,
Yeah.
is there and apart from right view,
Mm-hmm.
as people living in this world, we're bound to form views and opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a skillful way, in the same way that we form relationships as like people, we get married, we have children,
Mm-hmm.
we might form opinions about what's happening in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to skillfully form them and to investigate them in terms of right view?
Oh, absolutely.
Clinging?
Yeah.
Speak about that.
Yeah. Do you suffer or do you not suffer? You know, and then you know, so it comes back to that. That's why they like those Four Noble Truths are so important to. And it's not just am I suffering in the sense of am I totally miserable and losing the plot completely? But are there nigglings and is there an edge there? Is there some agitation? Is there some feeling of discomfort? Is there some kind of conflict arising? I've got a view, and of course, I've got this right view. But then when somebody doesn't agree with me, what does that do? Because because we can come up with all sorts of weird views, and that's what friends are for challenging some of our views that we sometimes hold. And so then, if you ended up without any friends, it's all sort of, they've disappeared because of your views, and so that you're able to hold a view, so it's important. All these sort of aspects, so both internally and externally, we start to pay attention. What's the result of the view?
One useful reflection that I have had about views is that whether this view is right or this view is wrong, it's still conditioned. If conditions were different, I would hold a different view. other people experience different conditions, they hold different views. This is totally inevitable. And, any view is cause. And so, whereas we tend to think my view is, I hold this view because, and the cause is because it's right. But if it was that obvious, everyone would hold it.
Yeah, I'd like to build on that.
Yeah.
Because, and we can watch someone, we have our views and we see other people's views, and what happens when we're in a certain view and we see another's view is actually causing more divisiveness, more pain, and more death, and it's like, I want to say, no, I am not perfect, but my view is pretty good compared to this view over here. And, and kind of just taking what you're saying, it's like, how do you go when you really see another view that is really causing pain on a level that it's like, it's almost frightening, the possibilities that can come from it. And so how are we working with that?
Well, again, it's back to suffering, and freedom from suffering. How do we implement the Eightfold Path? Because one is are we going to sort of try to bash those views out of those people? I mean, that's not a useful. It isn't helpful. It isn't helpful at all. How do we, so that learning to work with our own views and then being able to it doesn't mean we can't say anything or do anything, but what's the motivation? Because if the motivation is, I've got to get them or their views are so egregious or my view is so right, and I've got to get them over to my side, it goes on and on forever. And one is recognizing these are views that are leading to suffering, not just for myself, but for others. So it's just seeing that clearly. And then also seeing, well, what is the conditioning? Just as Tankacana was saying. These are conditioned views. Because it's easy to sort of turn that into, that in the same way that we assume self, we try to solidify others into a solid entity, and they end up not being conditioned phenomena. They become these evil one-dimensional entities. Yeah.
There was an article in the Washington Post today about a black man who reached out to members of the KKK, and he met with several of them, and he came to them with the question, how is it that you hate people you've never met? And they were willing to talk to him. And he eventually became friends with the Grand Dragon of a certain state. And this Grand Dragon went on to be the wizard of all the KKK members. And eventually, he quit. And he apologized for holding hate in his heart and gave his robes to this black man. And I think it's a really good story because it shows if you just ask a question about someone else's views and you don't bring your views to it,
Yeah.
you can have a dialogue can be very productive.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's a sense of one is being willing to listen to others and sort of being curious to be able to listen, but then also being able to listen to ourselves, because we've got a whole dialogue going on for it. So that opening up those avenues of communication and dialogue are really important without, having a really clear agenda of where it's going. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is actually go to the washroom. That's what I really want to do. And so why don't we just have a really quick break? I mean, just stretch your legs and no more than 5 minutes, and we'll be back, and I'll start another section on these 4 kinds of clinging.
When I have time. Right. On Monday, Wednesday, there's nothing exciting, but I teach we had exam last week. 3 weeks now, and a new one's coming up, so I'm writing
Yeah, fixed view is the big one.
Using computer.
Okay. Yeah.
I heard a funny joke about attachment.
Yeah.
Are Buddhists allowed to send emails? Yes, but only without attachments.
That's good.
Apparently there was somebody on the bicycle pilgrimage when they were on the bus ride back to the parking at the end,
Yeah.
who knew about 100 Buddhist jokes. In front of the bus telling all the jokes. That's one that was, I bet you somebody here, if they were in that bus, probably knows a lot more. That's the only one.
Okay. Hey, how did it go this year? Good? Great.
The weather was very nice.
That's perfect weather, yeah.
Yeah, the weather was probably about 80 degrees.
Yeah. Nah, okay. This, yeah. Yeah, so that's why I wanted to use this today to a few readings. Yeah, so I think we got most everybody. Okay, next, well, continuing on, I wanted to use the some illustrations from the Sutta Nipata, which is it's a collection of teachings from the Khuddaka Nikaya, which is kind of the odds and ends Nikaya, and the Sutta Nipata is verses, and it's not very long, but it and some of it is really probably the oldest layers of the Tipitaka, and particularly the it's called the chapter of the Eights, or the Book of the Eights, Atthakavagga, is there's some internal evidence of its within the Tipitaka, references to that. So it's and much of the, particularly the Atthakavagga, it's a collection of 16 suttas, verses, that, and it's, much of the Atthakavagga is about freeing oneself from attachment in its various forms. The chapter of the Eights, Book of the Eights, is it's mentioned a couple times in other suttas, and there's a good example. There's one sutta in the, I think it's the Samyutta Nikaya, I can't remember now, when the Buddha asked the monk Sona to recite all 16 verses or suttas from the Atthakavagga for him to see if you have you learned, are you learned, are you up to speed as a monk. Anyway, so that I wanted to use that, and in particular because I just recently read Gil Fronsdale's book, Buddha Before Buddhism. It's a translation and commentary from the Atthakavagga, the Book of the Eights. Good language, nice reflections. And I think it's also, in terms of, one, it's pointing, of course, it's pointing to these four kinds of clinging quite often. But it's also pointing to the goal in terms of the attainment of peace and realization of true peace. And it's often pointed to in personal terms, but it's also placed in the context of peace from social strife. And that's so both that's how they say the personal and the social really sort of work together, function together. So the first say clinging to sensuality, clinging to sensual pleasures, kama upadana. There's and these are they're a bit terse, but I think that's of course that's what poetry oftentimes is. But I think it's also it's the Buddha is quite pointed. So there's a few verses that are sort of clearly pointing to the difficulties of the clinging to sensuality, and these are actually in the very first discourse of the of this Atthakavagga, and this is and kama is sensuality, and so this is it's actually called the Kama Sutta. It's not like the tantric Kama Sutra. This is the Buddhist version. so, when desire for sensual pleasure is fulfilled, one will surely be delighted. The mortals obtained what the mortal wanted. But if this pleasure fades away, the person with this desire, who gives birth to this desire, is pained as if pierced by an arrow. And then the sutta ends with a person ever mindful therefore turns away from sensual desires. Abandoning them, one will cross the flood like bailing a boat to reach the far shore. So just that image of, and because the flood is both a flood of the underlying tendencies, say the asava, the oga, and that image of also crossing from danger, seeking safety. So bailing one's boat and keeping one afloat. And it was another. This is from the. th discourse, and the discourse on being quick. And the advice is cast in advice to monastics, but it's easy to extrapolate. So the advice that the Buddha gives to monastics at that time into sort of something that would be suitable for the modern world, suitable for lay life. Just how do we, because the Buddha gives his advice of dealing with sensuality and the world. One should shut one's ears to village talk, not be covetous with one's eyes, not be greedy for tasty things, or not take anything in the world as mine. Touched by sense experience, a monastic shouldn't despair about anything, wish for states of becoming, or tremble at terrors. One shouldn't hoard food, drinks, and clothes received, and shouldn't fret when none of that's obtained. Meditating, not loitering around, restraining restlessness. One shouldn't be negligent. A monastic should live in quiet dwellings. That's it's a very simple advice of turning to simplicity, and it's so easy, even in the Buddhist time, to be drawn out into the world of what's the news, even like village talk is, what, you could hear that around the well in the Buddhist time. Now you just go to your Facebook page, or go to the news or whatever, but it's still just village talk. Really all of it. It's not that different, and so that paying attention to this aspect of restraint and simplicity. It's a very restraint, simplicity, but then that opens up the opportunity for putting more attention into the practice itself and being mindful. So the next aspects is dit upadana. So upadana again being clinging, grasping, attachment. Ditti is views, opinions, and the Buddha puts a very strong correlation between views and disputes. When we hold a view, we're convinced of a view. When we angle for our view, inevitably we end up in dispute somehow, and that sense of holding to views and is a one of the indications of am I holding to a view? Am I attached to views? Is, do I end up in some kind of dispute? Do I end up in some conflict? Do I end up in some misunderstanding in some way? And because that's an inevitable result from the Buddha's perspective. Also, in the sense of sort of paying attention to the benefit of not being drawn into either views or disputes. But also that in the time of the Buddha, there was a very, and I imagine it might still exists today, just a strong value placed on, like a social value placed on, kind of presenting a view, debating it, arguing it, hammering it out, winning a debate. And so that's an aspect of course, strongly holding to a view in order to distinguish oneself in the world of dispute. And the Buddha is not really praising that. So this is the that's the third sutta, and it's the this is verse 780, and then I'll go to there's two more verses a little further on in that sutta. Some dispute with their minds corrupt. Some dispute with truthful minds. Sages do not enter disputes that have arisen, and so do not become despondent anywhere. Those who are cleansed do not form a view about states of becoming or non-becoming anywhere in the world. Having abandoned illusions and conceit, by what means would those who are cleansed go to non-attachment? They are without attachment. One who is attached argues over doctrines. How and with what does one argue with someone unattached? Embracing nothing, rejecting nothing. Right here, a person has shaken off every view. This beautiful, to me very beautiful, aspect of that shaking off of views, because it's the compulsion is very strong, and this, I think especially in it's, probably any culture, but certainly America, if you say that you don't have a particular view on something, you think, who are you? And even if you don't even believe in it yourself, you sort of stuff blurts out of your mouth, sort of, because you're afraid that people will look at you as somebody without a view. So it's that sense of seeing the benefit and the opportunity that arises without having to carrying around one's views. Also, when it says of course, there's all sorts of overlap. When we talk about these four forms of clinging, because those who are cleansed do not form a view about states of becoming or non-becoming, because those aspects of states of becoming and non-becoming are also states of being, in the sense of where we create a sense of identity of me and mine. I am a certain state or a certain being of some sort. So that ties into the say that last form of clinging. But there's overlap in most of them. But this sort of the predominant focus in this is views. And the next one, I'm just going to read a couple from each aspect of clinging. Also, just to encourage people, just letting it sink in or settle. Again, from not so much a philosophical or a doctrinal position, but the overarching theme today is meditation. And so, how can we use this understanding of that impulse for clinging and the relinquishing of clinging to help the mind become more peaceful, more clear, more settled. So, just a reminder. This next one is from the 8th Sutta, and it's again sort of linking views and disputes, and it's important to also recognize that say one who is, say, from a Buddhist perspective, somebody who is knowledgeable or accomplished or who is a sage is not this sort of vacuous blank slate who can't articulate any kind of idea in their mind whatsoever. That's not the case at all. But as having a perspective that sees clearly and everything is in balance, so that one isn't being drawn into one's own compulsion to prop up a view or hold a view, or to be pulled in to the views of others. It's helpful. Because sometimes we think, I can't think anything. I can't establish any kind of perspective. I just have non-attachment. But that isn't how it works. There's discernment and wisdom functioning. Okay, so these next few verses, wishing for praise while debating in an assembly, they become anxious. Refuted, they become depressed. Criticized and shaken, they seek their opponent's faults. One whose doctrine is called deficient, and by the judges rejected, despairs and grieves. The inferior debater moans, I have been defeated. Renunciants are elated and deflated by the disputes that arise among them. Seeing this, you should abstain from disputes. They provide no benefit other than being praised. When being praised for proclaiming their creed in an assembly, they laugh and become conceited, having gotten what they wished. While that conceit is a basis for distress, still they speak with arrogance and pride. Seeing this, one shouldn't dispute. Disputes don't lead to purity, say those who are skilled. The next form of clinging that the Buddha points to is what is called Silabbata Upadana. So again, Upadana, clinging. Sila is like virtue or precepts. Bhatta is like trainings or practices. Or like we're going, this rains retreat, we're studying, as we do every summer, studying the body of monastic discipline. And not the last Vinaya class, but the one before, then we studied the different vatas, and those are called protocols. So certain practices that we take on relationship to how to receive guests, how to look after requisites, how to be a guest going into another monastery, how to look after the teacher, all different duties or protocols. Those are vata. So then this next one is from the the fourth discourse that in this collection, and it's pointing to the the problem is the clinging and expectation of purity through taking on a certain practice in terms of I take on these precepts, and the clinging is the assumption that somehow if I do this, then I'm going to get purity out of it. If I do a certain practice, I'm going to. If I meditate enough, I'll get pure. You know? And it's not that you don't meditate or you don't keep precepts or you don't study the teachings, but it's like you have to realize that in and of themselves, they're tools that we have to learn how to use skillfully. And we can cling to them with delusion, misunderstanding, complicate them, or we can disregard them, reject them. But that's another form of clinging. So just recognizing that it's so much of the problem is not sort of doing things in a certain way or having certain trainings, but how we relate to it and the clinging and expectation behind it, and that in the Buddha in this discourse and several places throughout this whole Sutta Nipata and this whole section of the Book of the Eights, he comes down on that observances and precepts and because people tend to cling to them and make a problem of them or misunderstand them. But it's not that the Buddha doesn't prescribe proper practices. I mean, he does that as well, and that's one of the suttas in this is the whole sutta is basically it's the last one of the whole collection, and it's the whole sutta. It's a sutta to Sariputta, and it's basically laying out a whole path of practice, how to do things, how to relate to the world around. But anyway, we won't get into that one. But this one is pointing to the clinging and the problem that arises. Okay, so this an excerpt. No true Brahman speaks of purity in terms of something other. In terms of, say, some other being is going to purify me, if I just believe or rely in some supreme deity, that's something other. So no true Brahman speaks of purity in terms of something other, or in terms of virtue, religious observances, or what is seen, heard, or thought out. Merit and evil do not adhere to someone who has left behind what's grasped, who doesn't make up anything here. Abandoning one thing, people cling to another. Pursuing craving, they don't transcend their clinging. They let go, they grab. Like a monkey, they release one branch to grasp another. People attached to concepts in undertaking religious observances experience highs and lows. Great sages, having known by means of knowledge, having understood the Dhamma, don't experience highs and lows. They aren't foes to anything, seen, heard, or thought. How in this world could one have assumptions about those who see in this way, whose conduct is open? They don't categorize, honor, or claim anything to be absolute purity. having abandoned greed, the knot of attachment. They do not form any wish for anything in the world. True Brahmins who've crossed the boundaries wouldn't grasp anything they can know or see in the world. Neither passionate for passion, nor obsessed by dispassion. There is nothing here to grasp as superior. And this is another good illustration of this is chapter 13. A good illustration of these attachment, the clinging to precept and practice. Those who say virtue is ultimate dedicate themselves to purity and religious observances, saying, only by training in this will there be purity. Claiming to be skillful, they are faced with further becoming. One who falls away from virtue and observances trembles at having failed at the task and longs for purity, as a poor, far-off traveler hopes for, longs for home. But whoever has let go of all virtuous conduct and observances, as well as all actions, blamable and blameless, and who has no wishes for purity or impurity, lives without indulging, not even taking up peace. Whoever depends on austerities and on what is seen, heard, and thought, wails for purity, not free from craving for becoming and not becoming. Longing comes from wanting, and with planning there is fear. But with no death and rebirth here, how could one fear? What could one long for? So the next form of clinging that the Buddha points to is in the Pali, which is called attavadupadana. And it's the, I think Ajahn translates it as doctrine of self. And assumption of self is maybe a good way to say it as well. Atta, it's really important to sort of realize that what the Buddha is not saying is clinging to self. If clinging to self, it would be atta upadana, and he's saying attavadupadana, so that it's vada is like a doctrine, a teaching, an assumption, a presentation, and that's what happens. Because there, and it's important because what the Buddha his teaching depends on anatta, in the sense of not self. So that what we assume to be self is what we cling to, because there isn't an essence of self there that is solid and real and an essence, so that you can't cling to something that doesn't exist in the first place. But you can cling to something you assume to be there, and we do that. So that's why the Buddhist teaching is really trying to give us the awareness and discernment to not get caught by the things we assume. And what we assume most often is this sense of I and me and mine. So attavadupadana. So that the sense of self is the assumption of self is all. It's always trying to define and find a place to land or exist or to be or to become or to not become, and it's just this convolutions of assumption. So this is in the second discourse of this particular in this collection. I see people thrashing about in the world, thirsting for states of existence, not freed from craving becoming and non-becoming. Lowly people weep in the face of death. See them thrashing about in their selfishness, like fish in tiny puddles of a drying stream. Observing this, live unselfishly, not forming attachments to becoming. Subduing desire for both sides, fully understanding sense experience, free of greed, and doing nothing one would reproach oneself for. A sage does not attach to what is seen or heard. Fully understanding concepts and having crossed the flood, sages don't cling to possessions. With arrow removed, living alertly, they do not long for this world or the next. So that, it both points to the problem of, say, attachment to assumptions of self, but also gives a nice description of kind of a middle way and the fruits of that. This is from the 14th discourse in this collection. And the Buddha is responding to a question of so the question I ask you about seclusion and the state of peace, by seeing what is a monastic freed, not clinging to anything in this world. And the Buddha's response. Let them completely destroy the root of conceptual differentiation. That is, the idea, I am the thinker. Ever mindful, they train to subdue their cravings. They shouldn't get entrenched in any teachings they know, whether their own or that of others. Good people say that being entrenched is not release. They would not, because of this, think themselves better, worse, or equal to others. Experiencing many things, they don't take a stand in thoughts of themselves. Tranquil within, a monastic wouldn't seek peace from others. For one tranquil within, there is nothing embraced, and so how could anything be rejected? Just as when no waves appear in the middle of a still sea, so a monastic, still and unmoving, would not swell with conceit anywhere. So that stepping stepping back from those, the compulsion to attach or sustain that sustenance, sense of sustenance, And sustenance in that sense of I, me, and mine, that attavada, that assumption of selfhood. Just to wrap up I mean, those are descriptions with a couple illustrations of each of the kinds of clinging. Then a description of letting go of attachments is just wanted to present a couple examples of what the Buddha points to in terms of, say, letting go, relinquishing, releasing attachment. So and this is in the 5th discourse. Having views about what is ultimate, a person makes these the best in the world and calls all other views inferior. As such, they have not gone beyond quarreling. Seeing benefit in the self, or in things seen, heard, and thought, or in precepts and religious practices, and then grasping at this, a person then sees all else as inferior. What one relies on in order to see all else as inferior is an entanglement, say those who are skilled. Monastics should, therefore, not depend on things seen, heard, or thought out, or on virtue and religious observances. Nor should they make up views in the world by means of knowledge, precepts, and religious observances. Nor would they think of themselves inferior or superior to others, and they shouldn't take themselves as equal. Letting go of what is taken up, the person free of grasping doesn't depend on knowledge, or take sides when factions disagree, or fall back on any kind of view. One not inclined to either side, to becoming or non-becoming, to here or the next world, there exists nothing to get entrenched in when considering the doctrines others grasp. Here one does not conceive the slightest concept in regard to what is seen, heard, or thought. How, in this world, could one categorize the Brahman who does not take hold of views? One does not construct, prefer, or take up any doctrine. A true Brahman, not led by precepts or religious practices, who has gone beyond, does not fall back on belief, is one who is thus. Thus is tata or tanda, tandi. It's like that's one of the epithets of the Buddha is Tathagata, one gone to thusness. And the last quote that I'll bring up is from the 6th Sutta. It's actually the Jara Sutra. It's a discourse on old age. This is the very first verse. Short indeed is this life. You will die in less than 100 years. And if living longer, you'll die of old age. And anyway, that's. Then he ends up with the last 3 verses of this discourse. Independent everywhere, sages make nothing cherished or not cherished. Despair and selfishness, don't stick to them, as water doesn't stick to a leaf. As a drop doesn't stick to a leaf, or water to a lotus petal, so what is seen, heard, or thought doesn't stick to a sage. By being without passion and dispassion, those who are cleansed don't ruminate about what is seen, heard, or thought out, nor do they wish for purity through anything else. So those are things that came to mind when because these topics we usually sort of pool people over the winter and get various ideas, and the topic of attachment was suggested, so that so these, and it's a very it forms a very central part of the Buddha's teaching and how he presents how do you say, as an origin of suffering, say clinging, attachment is an aspect of the arising of suffering, and of course the relinquishing of clinging is a way of accessing that cessation of suffering, experiencing the freedom from the agitation in the mind. This is well, are there any questions before we go on? Yeah.
I'm wondering, where would physical pain, would that fit under sensuality, sort of like the opposite of pushing away, or is that not really fit in this?
Well, no, I mean you can fit it in. You can fit it in anywhere, really. I mean, in the sense of sensuality, in the sense that one is I would say in discomfort because of pain, and is seeking relief from that pain through something pleasurable, or one is through that desire to be comfortable, is then thrust into aversion or fear toward pain. So that you start seeing how you start teasing it out and seeing the causal process. So it isn't as if all attachment to sensuality or attachment to sensual pleasure is just getting pleasurable sensation, but it's also the whole constellation of reactions, like the whole sense of fear that comes up around, say, not being able to get what one wants, is an aspect of that clinging, and that desire for security and stability, so that it's stable and isn't going to change. So those are all, they're permutations, and it's important to not get too locked into, it's got to fit this narrow. So you start seeing, you start teasing it out and seeing how that affects it. Or there, I'm just say the view that say the human body shouldn't experience pain. I mean, that's what's been a huge, especially in America, prescribing of just gobs and gobs of painkillers, because the view that one, really the duty of the medical profession is to make sure we as human beings don't experience any pain. And there's, so there's the view is there, and relationship to pain. So you can start teasing it out and reflecting it on it in many different ways.
Or
Yeah.
the last quote that you read said something about not clinging to or passion and dispassion.
Right.
I don't recall hearing that. Usually I recall hearing say that cultivating dispassion is actually a good thing. But
Yes, and that's exactly what many of these in this Sutta Nibbana, and particularly in the Atthakavagga, is saying that even the things that we think are good, if we form an attachment to it, it'll come back and bite us, and it'll limit us. So that even, when the Buddha praises dispassion, or he praises keeping precepts, once you start clinging to it, it's going to limit you and it's going to create suffering. It's be an attachment. So we'll reap the fruits of it. So that it's making sure that things are, say, understood and in balance, so that one's not being entangled in that clinging process. Yeah.
I'm thinking, since this is regarding meditation specifically,
Yeah.
so are you saying that these things would come up in our meditation and then we would cling to them? So if there was, I could see where like pain
Yeah.
would come up, and that there'd be an aversion to it, so you're clinging to not wanting it,
Yeah.
But I don't know, I don't get into too many quarrels when I'm meditating with myself, but
Huh.
I'm trying. I don't. I'm trying to think about how I might run into those things, and I know attachment's easy. Okay?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one is we tend to certain tracks that we're more, like, by temperament we're more familiar with, and so that's just understanding that more clearly, and then. But even when we, even like disputes, we end up, kind of in dispute with ourselves sometimes, holding to some particular, perspective or something that being contrary about. There's many permutations to that. But certainly that we don't have to experience all of them. One's enough to make you suffer.
It was very clear in there was that basically quarreling is just no good.
Absolutely.
Very clearly.
Yeah.
I heard that over and over and over, and I know that that's difficult because you want things to be a certain way. Wouldn't we want the world to be at peace and people not killing each other and blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
All those things, not wanting these things. And then how do we go about that? So it's a little, I don't know, it's like you don't have anything you can do but try to espouse a certain view.
Well, it's also, again, it's not so much espousing a view, but presenting a way forward. It was like what we were talking about, like what Laura brought up was a good example. And how do we support each other as human beings, as opposed to divide ourselves into camps of who's right, who's wrong, who holds this view, who holds that view, who takes this stand, who takes that stand. And it's more like, how do we relate to each other as human beings who are suffering, but who are also capable of freedom from suffering. Yeah.
Can you distinguish between clinging and craving? In that clinging is the precondition of becoming. Why can't we just drop clinging and go to craving? What is it about that?
Well, say like in the dependent origination teachings, craving, feeling, we feel, we experience, and then craving arises. And of course it's fed by ignorance, delusion, not understanding the true nature of things. So craving is the next sort of movement of the mind. So it's that craving, that impulse to become, to get rid of, to acquire, to experience. So there's that craving. And then we tend to, and it's still a little bit unformed, but then it's that clinging that creates a little better focus for it. Okay, where our craving settles on sensual desire or sensual pleasure or a particular view.
Content.
Yes, it's like giving a content to that craving. That's where that word sustenance is actually really helpful or good. It's being sustained, and we're seeking sustenance through it in a certain way. Let's take go ahead.
So to break the chain of dependent origination, or to kind of experience whatever that is, and to get, is it possible to, if it were, I don't know how long or whatever, but to the whole experience of attachment in that, to make a break?
That's where suffering's so important. It's like Ajahn Chah's classic kind of description of dependent origination or illustration of dependent origination, because because you've got these 12 links of the dependent origination chain. It's all very logical and sequential, and looks really clear. And he said, it's not how it works. In experience, he said it's like you're up in a tree and you fall down from a tree. As you're falling down, you're not counting the branches as you go down. But all you know is that you hit the bottom, it's going to hurt. So similarly with that dependent origination, it's helpful to have those as a kind of framework for reflection. But when it comes to experience, it's that experience of dukkha, of suffering. Because okay, where did I bite into this? Where did I really get tripped up? What really hooked me? And that's so that we can use those different links to reflect on. Yeah.
So in the readings you did, that the Buddha referred to what is seen, heard, and thought.
Yes.
Could you comment on that a little bit? Because I guess in the context of meditation, it would be like just developing an awareness of what you're thinking, hearing, and seeing, right?
Yeah.
Is it as kind of simple as that, or what do you think? There's more to that?
No, I mean that's enough. That'll keep. Yeah, that's enough to keep you going. But it is an idiom, because sometimes the Buddha will point to the whole six sense base, seen, heard, smell, taste, touch, thought. But then, and this it happened a couple places here, and it comes up in many other places through the suttas where the Buddha uses seen, heard, say conceived or thought, and so that's where the other senses are subsumed into that experience. Because whatever the case, we still have to say think about or remember or experience through the mind the other sense doors that contribute to our experience of the moment. Yeah. Let's take an opportunity to, again, this the overarching theme is meditation, so that so to sit quietly for a few minutes anyway, just to let these teachings resonate. And say the topic was sort of, can we function without attachment? What would it be like? Breathing in and breathing out without attachment. Or what does attachment actually feel like? When the mind moves, what does attachment feel like? Because it's important, in order to relinquish anything, we have to feel it, experience it. Also, what attachments we've gone over in quite a lot of detail of attachment, and what kinds of attachments tend to come up. How do they manifest? And what's the habit of the mind? Now, what's the familiar track that the mind goes down? Can we choose a place of, just that sense of non-attachment? That's where, say, like contemplation of space is really helpful. So often attachment is looking for an object. So then to just contemplating space, allowing space to be an object of contemplation. What do we take as an abiding place for the mind, for attention? That's where that we abide in or are sustained, seek sustenance in certain objects. That both recognizing those patterns of clinging, but then taking an object of non-clinging, space. Just paying attention to those interesting shifts of attention. And what do they feel like? Again, it's so important that our meditation, our practice comes back to the Four Noble Truths. This, as Sariputta described, the Four Noble Truths as being like the elephant's footprint. It's all animals in the world fit in, their footprint can fit in the elephant's footprint. All teachings of the Buddha, all teachings that were given fit into this elephant's footprint of the Four Noble Truths. Bringing it back, just investigating and experimenting. Okay, so we could have a break and maybe 15 minutes, come back. So it's 3:05 right now, 3:20, come back.
started to read it. It's pretty heavy. Yeah. Really? I've got another book, I think a lot of it, that writing is not so 30 years. Oh, okay. It's not his best writing. Well, yeah, it's pretty, it's just kind of other side of the comedy, Yeah, sister so proud of you, sister so proud that he passed away. He wrote a lot on probably right after the Thanksgiving retreat. Oh. Probably the very next morning. I'll be back from it in June. Next year. Awesome. I see you maybe getting better. Yeah. Yeah, they told me a few of us first time. I was there last time we were. Yeah. You're at the music fair. Yeah, it's either that or, yeah, I guess that was what it was. Because I've been with my mother for about 10 days and my family. That's a pretty deep experience. Well, I learned to all take it. I mean, she's great. You know, it's somebody. I just talked to her the other day. It was her 96th birthday. And they always have a September birthday celebration for all the and their September birthday including her. So they went out somewhere and they
I said, well, Mother, I guess they're not ready to call you yet, huh? You haven't come up in line yet. No, but we had a very beautiful interaction, because when I arrived, she still had hypnosis returned to her heart with me, that she was that share. And she wrestled with that pretty much the whole week. I mean, she's reconciled with dying, she's reconciled all these other things, but she really kind of wanted to get back there. Because she's in a very austere little hospital, like half room, you know. And then the last day I was there, my sister and I spoke to the social worker and came back to talk to her and said, you know, this is where I'm going to be after all this time. You know, just like, that's how she felt after all that. You know, it's a very amazing example for all of us. So it's a pretty profound trip.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, sure, yeah. We'll have a good adventure.
Okay.
Yeah. Where when I do see you again. Like I told her, I said, till we meet again, because I know that's what she believes, so I said, till we meet again,
Okay.
Hi, man. How are you?
How about yourself?
How long you gonna stay here?
I'm not sure, but maybe till 2 weeks more.
2 weeks more? So how long have you been?
3 weeks.
3 weeks? Wow! I know more than a that's wonderful. You made it for 3 weeks. Wow.
And you?
I just that's awesome.
How often do you come?
I travel very often. But if I in America, I would come very often, like every couple weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. Where are you from?
Austin, Texas.
Huh?
Texas?
Oh, you know Corina from Texas?
Austin.
I don't know.
It is, do you know Houston? Dallas? The same state.
Oh, same state.
Yeah. So, you know Mexico?
Hmm?
Right above Mexico. That is Texas.
How did you know about this place?
I practice Upāsika.
Maybe
Yep.
if I get. No, I'm just gonna sit here. So how did you know about this place?
I practice Upāsika. And there are a few Upāsana centers in California. And I was there, they mentioned about this place. Two seminaries here practice the same tradition that I do right now.
So you went to that place and they told you about this place?
Yeah.
See. What are you interested in Buddhism? Are you a Buddhist?
I don't know. I'm very interested in changing suffering.
Changing suffering?
Suffering, dukkha.
They already suffer.
And I think I found that through meditation
Really?
that,
It worked for you? We have some sample very interesting about how
I think coming here,
uh-huh.
I think before maybe I heard a lot about job and trying to do the right things and worry, anxiety, things like that. But
Sounds like me.
I think it helps with all these things. And even to come here is, I think it takes awareness. So we get here to
Yeah, you were really hard to really teach it. If you want to take this, you need to take time to see
That's where my questions are coming from. Oh, really? Is that what you think? I only come up here when I'm sad. Come up here when I'm in a good mood. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. Yeah, well, part of me's like, that wanted to do too. You see the thread, one thing right, and then all the other threads are running back and working, because the one really had that look on my face when I walked up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, can I ask a question?
Sure.
It was in the beginning of the second part, when you're reading, there was something on assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that to me is just how the mind makes assumptions about somebody else's assumptions.
Yes.
And it's just like, and then it's like, well, I'm right, my assumptions, and then I know I'm making assumptions of their assumptions, and it's all from the mind trying to make sense of something. And when I watch that, how it's making sense of something with my assumptions, I really don't know. And then it's like, it's in a whirlpool, because it's basing everything to try to make sense of something, or of life that's based on assumptions that actually are always incomplete.
Welcome to the human existence. Which is exactly why it's so important to actually bring it up as a perspective of reflection, investigation, because our what we truly know and know with real discernment is pretty limited, and to be able to relate to the nature of the mind, to make associations as a very basic function of the mind. It's that right at the kind of core level. That's perception. Perception is making associations through memory and association. So that's happening, and then we fill in the blanks from there, and so much of it is assumption. So it's important to be holding that with a sense of a certain willingness to investigate, willingness to. It isn't as one's going around in doubt and confusion all the time, but it's sort of like just giving it some space where we're not. It's like Ajahn Chah. It's just not sure, not a sure thing. Uncertain. Because that's the reality of it, and we just make assumptions, we make stories, we lock in those stories. We've got the view of, and we've got that position of self that we're protecting, and so it hardens along the way, and keeps, and then of course we end up in disputes and conflict. So it that sense of balance being so important, and willingness to question, willingness to be wrong, which where that's very threatening, because we invest in being right so much, but there's tremendous freedom in being wrong. Like, I don't know. Yeah. we tend not to go there. It's just too scary. There's this feeling of false security, being right, being sure, being certain. It's absolutely this way. This is the way I should be, this is the way they should be, this is the way the world should be. But that from a place of Dhamma, then that being able to, I'm assuming a lot, and there's a tremendous freedom in just being, I'm not sure, and which doesn't mean one goes around in just this conflicted sense of doubt and self-doubt, but it's understanding the reality that we base so much of our positions on assumptions. Okay, the next section is the rest of the afternoon. Of course, the overall theme is attachment, but then what do we use as a counterpoint for attachment? What do we use as an antidote? And especially in meditation, but that moves into all the rest of our life very quickly if we allow it. And say in the Buddhist teachings, the importance of a word called nekkhamma, which is renunciation, relinquishment. It's a very important word and concept. Letting go, releasing. There's many ways of saying it, but that word, renunciation, is good to put a positive spin on. I think in the English language it has a kind of a scary edge to it, like I'm having to give up something that's going to make me feel bereft, and I'm going to miss out on something. But renunciation is something that is much more attuned to, or maybe closely tied to simplicity. That ability to just not have to follow every impulse, protect a particular position, stand up for the sense of self. I can relinquish. I can have a sense of renunciation around these things. And I think renunciation is the willingness and ability to renounce that which is, and to relinquish that which is a cause of suffering. It's like, and again, that sense of renunciation is just the connotations in English language are a certain grim feeling of it. Oh God, renunciation. But it's important that say, like, to reflect how the importance that the Buddha gives to it, and it's like the Buddha puts the nekkhamma, renunciation, as a barami. It's one of the 10 baramis. it's the third one, so that it comes after generosity and virtue. So those are very beautiful, uplifting qualities, and really it's a continuation of a theme of a beautiful quality, the ability to put down, set aside, relinquish. And particularly, of course, relinquishing that which tends to lead to suffering. And also that parami are a good translation of parami would be, say, these are a parami is a force for transformation, like a real wholesome, skillful transformation. So that nekamma is that renunciation is a opportunity for transformation. So that when we're willing to put down, set aside, relinquish something that complicates the mind, agitates the mind, keeps us suffering, then it's a blessing. Gives us the opportunity for that real positive transformation. And I think as one of the things is it's important to not view renunciation in terms of again, the sort of idealizing or making it sort of a doctrinal position. This is something you should do. You should renounce. You should be letting go, and that's a. It's more like understanding the principles of cause and effect, understanding how these causal conditions lead to different outcomes. Then one wants to let go of the causal conditions that are leading one to suffering and complication. So it's a and this simple say act of letting go is being able to just letting go, releasing, relinquishing, renouncing, and of course that's brings to mind a well-known saying of Ajahn Chah especially in terms of practice and meditation, but the same thing in one's life. If you let go a little, you get a little peace. If you let go a lot, you get a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you'll get complete peace. It's very, very easy causal factors, and so that in sense that recognizing that renunciation isn't about making our minds miserable. It's about greater and more sustainable happiness and well-being. That's what it does. It's by its very nature. So there's a Dhammapada verse, verse 290. It said, "It is wisdom that enables letting go of a lesser happiness in pursuit of a happiness which is greater." So it's you realize, renunciation is, you're not renouncing your wisdom or your liberation, you're renouncing that which is less satisfying in order to gain that which is more satisfying. So it's an important distinction, in the sense of attending to to renunciation. And it's also important to recognize that, say, even the Buddha, when he was still, say, an unawakened bodhisattva, didn't have his initial reaction to renunciation wasn't that positive. Also, it takes wisdom. There's the Tapusa Sutta, which is Anguttara. Sutta 41, and Tapusa goes and meets up with Ananda in the woods, the Great Wood, and Tapusa is a householder, and he says to Ananda, Venerable Ananda, sir, we are householders who indulge in sensuality, delight in sensuality, enjoy sensuality, rejoice in sensuality. For us, renunciation seems like a sheer drop-off. Yet I've heard that in this doctrine and discipline, the hearts of the very young monks leap up at renunciation, grow confident, steadfast, and firm, seeing it as peace. So right here is where the doctrine and discipline is contrary to the great mass of people. That is this issue of renunciation. And so then Ananda's response is, this calls for talk, householder. Let's go see the Blessed One. Like, I'm not going to deal with this. Let's go see the Buddha. And so then they go and see the Buddha, and of course, Ananda explains what Tapusa, the householder, what his perspective is, and then the Buddha's response, so it is, Ananda, so it is. Even I myself, before my awakening, when I was still an unawakened bodhisattva, thought, renunciation is good, seclusion is good. And of course, the Buddha left the palace, and this sort of very keen to be a religious seeker and live simply and all that. And says so. He said, I thought renunciation is good, seclusion is good, but my heart didn't leap up at renunciation, didn't grow confident, steadfast, or firm, seeing it as peace. The thought occurred to me, what is the cause? What is the reason? Why my heart doesn't leap up in renunciation, doesn't grow confident, steadfast, or firm, seeing it as peace? Then the thought occurred to me, I haven't seen the drawback of sensual pleasures. I haven't pursued that theme. I haven't understood the reward of renunciation. I haven't familiarized myself with it. That's why my heart doesn't leap up at renunciation. And so that's that sense of, so then when he says, then the thought occurred to me, if having seen drawbacks and blah, 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 and understood the reward of renunciation, and if I were to familiarize myself with it, there's the possibility that my heart would leap up at renunciation, grow confident. And So then he does, and then he puts that in this, and it's because of that, doing that, then that's what understanding or seeing the benefit in renunciation. That was the kind of a trigger for being able to access deeper states of meditation. Nice. Yeah. It's Anguttara 9, Sutta 41. It's called the Tapusa Sutta. And then he goes through the increasing refinement of attention and letting go, then accessing increasingly refined states of samadhi. So, but it comes from renunciation and being, say that then, because then it plugs into that the stock phrases of then, I familiarized myself with it. My heart leaped up at renunciation, grew confident, steadfast, firm, seeing it as peace. Then, quite withdrawn from sensuality, withdrawn from unskillful qualities, I entered and remained in the first jhana, rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. So it's like as a direct result of that, being comfortable in recognizing the benefit of renunciation and reflecting on the drawbacks of sensuality. So that sense of renunciation being a something that arises and one you say relies on that quality of renunciation as a way of encouraging the mind. Step back from the things that are entangling, go forward to those things that are peaceful. Yeah.
Does he delineate the drawbacks of sensuality?
Not in this sutta, but there's some real juicy ones.
Some convincing. Where should I go? Fox News. Fox News.
Just had a few an opinion. Yeah, so I think one of the I'll take a quick look. But I find the easiest thing so often is just going to access the insight, going into the index and like the subject, and then just going to like the sensuality, and then and usually something really interesting comes up. And it's like first one that comes up is the Mahadukkha Khandha Sutta, the great mass of stress. So that's probably a good start. So.
Is that Amendment 13?
Yeah, Majjhima 13. Yeah, that's Majjhima 13. And but that does, I find so often it's like you get really good start. Just access the insight, boom, sensuality, and then there's a whole list of suttas that are illustrate. Yeah.
Can you speak to relationship of renunciation with, in the West we use the word very often moderation.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of moderating is, do you see the relationship there? Or renunciation as something more black and white?
Oh, as soon as you start going into practice, and it gets less black and white.
So that makes me think it's more like moderating.
Yes, because also when you think in terms of renunciation, it's also, it's not that one is renouncing every avenue of pleasure and happiness. It's moderating those habits or tendencies that keep leading one to sort of a frustrating end of experience. Even if it's pleasurable, then one ends up as kind of empty or hollow or frustrated at the end of it. Yeah.
I've been thinking about this thought of just holding things lightly in the relationship, and I think he kind of was on the same point.
Yeah, I think that moderation is in that sense of, again, moderation, middle way, but it isn't just because, we'll only get a little bit of pleasure and it'll be okay. Because even a little bit of pleasure of the wrong kind is still unsatisfying. Whereas, say something like, say, renunciation is also or should also be tempered with other clusters of wholesome qualities, so that we, by inclining the mind to renunciation and maybe encouraging the mind in, say, samvega, which is like that sense of spiritual urgency, a sense of real say like a deep motivation that really wants to find a solution, an answer, and a way out. So that's a very wholesome and positive quality. Or the quality of pasada, of and pasada is like, actually it's like the root of my name, Pasanno, and it has different connotations of clearness, brightness, faith, joy, delight. So that sense of clarity and brightness, in terms of seeing clearly and experiencing a clear heart, clear mind, faith and joy that one nourishes, and through seeing and establishing oneself in Dhamma and Dhamma principles, Dhamma practice, nurturing those sources of happiness that really brighten and lift up the mind, lift up the heart. Those are, you don't really want to moderate those. So it's sort of like and renunciation gives like opens the door into that experience. So yeah, moderation works in some places. Especially in terms, because renunciation can sometimes be referring to certain elements of conduct. So then, okay, we need to really be moderate in some of our conduct, and so it's about, we're always paying attention to those cause and result, the cause and condition, and the result that happens.
That's type to discernment. Really.
Yeah.
So those two are together.
Those two work together. And also, just in terms of Dhamma practice, one of the qualities that the Buddha always emphasizes is that yoniso manasikara, that wise attention, skillful reflection. So there's that is something that modulates and moderates our response to the world around us and to our own impulses. So that inclination to nekamma, renunciation, and again, really trying to hold that nekamma as a parami. Like, well, this is really a force for transformation. So it's incredibly positive, incredibly wholesome, and the Buddha wouldn't make it into a parami if it didn't have these extremely beneficial results. And so that's something that is important. That aspect of recognizing that renunciation is it's cultivated in a variety of ways, but oftentimes more like an underlying attitude or how we relate to things, so that we're willing to let go, to let things drop away. That's why in the assigned readings for all those people who read them, I know you all did. Bhikkhu Bodhi points to nekamma, renunciation, and compassion being a pair and being like the wings of a bird. So that's what really allows one to fly, and so that it seems, somehow logically, or in a rational sort of worldly sense, renunciation and compassion seems to be going in different directions, but they're really, both of them, their common root is the relationship to suffering. So that and and important to have that say renunciation, coming out of that innate urge to really want to be free from suffering and pain, but then also compassion that is really attuned to wanting to oneself and others to be free from suffering, and so they're mutually supportive. And Bhikkhu Bodhi sort of finishes where he wraps up the two quite nicely. Over time, we'll find that the two, though tending in different directions, eventually are mutually reinforcing. Compassion impels us toward greater renunciation as we see how our own greed and attachment make us a danger to others. And renunciation impels us toward greater compassion, since the relinquishing of craving enables us to exchange the narrow perspectives of the ego for the wider perspectives of a mind of boundless sympathy. Held together in this mutually strengthening tension, renunciation and compassion contribute to the wholesome balance of the Buddhist path and to the completeness of its final fruit. Yeah, Rick.
As we're reflecting on relinquishment and letting go, and it's, I could see, we talk about that, that's a trap even in itself. It's like, oh, I have to relinquish and let go of this, and that can be a trap where it's like, I actually have to relinquish relinquishment. I have to let that go, because that can also be a trap in itself, how the mind can get lost in that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and especially if it again, where if one is approaching it from, say, an attachment to view and opinion, like I have to, I should. If I were a good Buddhist, I'd be a good renunciant as a view. Yeah, precept and practice, and sense of this is what I have to do. I have to, if it just turns into an empty, ideal-driven practice, and it doesn't, still a source of suffering, or comes from a sense of self. When I relinquish, I will become a good Buddhist. Maybe not. There's one more suffering being in the world. So it's really understanding, because it should be shining a light on, and that's what we use it for. That's why that use of yoniso manasikara, that wise attention, careful consideration, really seeing, weaving between the ways in which attachments and clinging create suffering, and how we can relinquish and release those, let go of that.
Yeah, I think for me in the practice, talking about compassion, begins that. It kind of begins to offer the space between that for myself, and watching my mind, and then I feel it in the body, the space. It starts to let go.
Yeah. Margaret.
Does it work? The thing that's coming to mind for me is the way that we think about how to work with anxiety. So like if a child develops anxiety around separating from a parent, like the more the child doesn't separate, the greater that anxiety becomes. And so then there's sort of the way that you would work with that is with compassion, not to just say you rip the child away from the parent, but there is a decisiveness to it. Not like there's other things like hoarding or anything that's about getting, or pushing away that you're turning into it. So I guess it seems like sometimes it would be about moderation, but sometimes there is sort of a decisiveness. I'm doing this.
Yeah, and it's okay. Bang. This is, and again, that's that. In terms of a power of transformation or possibility of transformation, of what a barami, nekama barami, of being able to, really do it, really set the mind, and really let go. That has a transformative effect on us, as opposed to kind of doing it in half-hearted way and then getting half-hearted results. Yes.
Longpo, I was wondering, do you think, would there be a possibility that Parami by Ajahn Pasanno might come out in book again? I don't know. I thought it was a really great book. I got it here many years ago, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it to a friend, and he kept it, didn't want to give it back, so. A group of people would sit together, and we wanted to use that as a book to teach.
Right. I haven't heard any news of it being reprinted. It's a good one to say, make a suggestion to the. There are there's a group of people who are quite committed to printing our books and keeping getting new ones out and reprinting some of the old ones. Try to remember that, because they oftentimes send me an email and do you have any ideas for? So, nah.
I know that Sakula, she has a personal project right now of trying at Portland Friends of the Dhamma. She has a project of trying to raise money to have a certain number of those books republished. So I know that that's something.
Well, that's a good start in terms of, because that might be a bit more immediate. That's Portland Friends of the Dhamma.
So popular, they're even selling them on Amazon. They're supposed to not be sold, but they're selling them, and they're sold out. You can't buy them anywhere. So it's that popular.
The website does have it online.
This is true. It is as an ebook or as a Mobi.
There is a huge demand for it. But
Yeah. I know that's sort of from our book person.
They won't mail copies of them to America. You can get them from other monasteries overseas, but they won't mail them here for some reason. I tried to get them.
It's very, very expensive. Maybe when we're in Thailand, we could check and see. Because there's a whole bunch of us going, and we'll have extra luggage. Yeah. We have to make a list of things that would be good to do.
Possible for people that go through that, what do you call it, publish on demand or whatever, you just publish your own, print your own?
Yep.
So that's a possibility too, if you don't want to wait.
But it usually ends up being very expensive just for, say, one copy. But if you get a group of people together, like Portland Friends of the Dhamma and a few other people, then cuts it immediately. Yeah.
So I understand how compassion can reinforce renunciation, but I have trouble understanding is the reverse. How does renunciation reinforce compassion? Because isn't it possible for renunciation to lead to apathy?
Well, it's certainly possible to let it to make it lead to apathy, but that would be a misapplication of it. It'd be a misapprehension of its purpose, because the Buddha's path is always the Buddha always casts it in as a benefit for oneself and a benefit for others, like both together. So it's not anything that sort of undermines effort and qualities like compassion, then that would be kind of seen as opposed to the path of practice. Because there isn't really a separation between my suffering and other suffering. So it isn't just about me getting rid of my suffering, then I'm all right. It isn't how the Buddha conceived of the path. It's possible that with wrong view and wrong practice, that's people do, but that's exactly what they say, that being able to understand attachment and freeing oneself from attachment, how that brings benefit. So that sense, as we pay attention to renunciation, and we start benefiting from relinquishing our own greed, hatred, and delusion, then the result should be a much bigger, clearer heart that's able to encompass others.
What's been coming through my mind all afternoon is the Metta Sutta, the very last stanza about the wisdom part of it. It's like not attaching to fixed views.
Right.
One isn't born again into this world. And it's interesting, the antidote for attachment. You've gone over both the three phases of the right intention.
Right.
And kindness is the middle one. Renunciation and compassion. But kindness is the middle one. It's really interesting.
Yeah. No, and generally, sort of that link between loving kindness and compassion is quite very, very strong. It's sort of really linked together. And and even it's that right intention, samma sankappa. Ne kamma sankappa that's your initial impulse of right intention, right thought, but then the next are the relinquishing of those thoughts, intentions of ill will and harming, and so then that's the basis for loving kindness and compassion. So that as we are able to relinquish and let go, then those wholesome qualities of both generosity and selflessness, along with loving kindness and compassion, are intrinsic part of the fruit of the practice. So I think contemplating renunciation and recognizing it as an antidote to to attachment, but then also paying attention. Like sometimes we sort of start, our mind runs ahead of ourselves, and sort of, I've got to renounce everything to do with the world and blah blah blah, and I just pay attention to the little things. It's that kind of that active renunciation of that impulse for gratification on a small level. That impulse or gratification of either just have gain, something pleasurable. Doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's sort of, just can I set that aside? And also reinvestigating, what happens when I actually say relinquish or renounce the desire. One formulates a desire for some particular kind of food, or a desire for some particular kind of possession. And what happens when one renounces it? Because the feeling of desire is that I'm not going to be complete if I don't get what I want. And I'm going to miss out on something if I don't get what I want. That's the nature of desire. It's a function of desire. And what happens when we relinquish that desire, when we renounce that desire? We have renunciation toward that desire. Nothing. Nothing happens. We just didn't get what we wanted. Everything's the same as before. So that isn't how it feels. So that just paying attention to, everything's the same as it was before, except I don't have that desire. I said, okay, that's great. So just taking note of that, paying attention to that, because it's actually really important. That sense of that compelling nature of desire. And the same thing with although it's a bit trickier when it comes around to like views and opinions, because so often views and opinions are tied in with our sense of self, who we conceive ourselves to be. And it is helpful to sort of pay attention to that when one does relinquish a particular view, or one challenges a particular view, an opinion that one's holding, that however we've conceived of ourselves, it really hasn't changed. It's just that we have less clutter and in our minds, less hard edges, less boundaries that are quite fixed, and so being able that's the investigation of the benefits and the drawbacks around renunciation, around relinquishment, around attachment. What's attachment? Attachment locks us in, slots us into something, and then it's a boundary that we create. I mean, it's a prison that we create for ourselves, and we imprison ourselves in a view, or we imprison ourselves in a particular desire structure, imprison ourselves in a sense of what we should do, what our and who we should be, and that's a tremendous burden. So that casting off that burden is not something to be fearful of or really concerned about. And sort of, this is a great opportunity to set aside. It's like the opportunity to step out of prison. Because in reality, the doors are open, and we choose to stay, and we choose to sort of make our home there, and that's problematic. Just learning how to just realize that that investigation of attachment and that relinquishment, renunciation, letting go is an opportunity for really stepping out of the prison that we've we've created or assumed into existence. So that, there's different ways that we can do that, and part of it is it's just like just being willing to put things down, to let things go, because we pick up things without really noticing it. It's like of course, a great example, or the one that's often cited is Ajahn Liam, who's this. He's got probably more duties than all of us combined here. And more things that he takes responsibility for, more duties, more people looking to him. And he carries it all very extremely lightly. Years ago he was, we were preparing for the Ajahn Chah's cremation ceremonies. We were building this huge new hall because we knew a lot of people were coming to Wat Pah Pong, to Ajahn Chah's monastery. We needed to build this big hall, and he's working on it, and the ceremony is actually coming up, and it's a big royal ceremony with, as it ended up, and we were expecting that. There's several 100,000 people showed up, and anyway, he's up working on it, and monks are working on it, lay people are working on it, and his engineer comes along, and he's, wow, this is a huge hall. Who designed it? And Ajahn Liam said, yeah, I did. And who's overseeing the project? He said, yeah, I am. He said, when's it going to be finished? Tonight. Oh, what do you mean tonight? How this is huge? How are you going to get it tonight? He said, yeah. So it comes the evening, it's finished. Tomorrow morning I might do it again. And that's you pick things up in a skillful way, you apply yourself to it, and you put it down. And that's letting go. Letting go isn't sort of, I can't have anything to do with this. It's just, it's like that. So at the beginning of this afternoon, that sense of samadhana, that picking things up rightly, and but it isn't sort of holding on to it either. You pick it up and you put it down when it's appropriate. When it's appropriate, you pick it up again. So that learning, it's that aspect of letting go is it has these nuances that we need to reflect on and experiment with. So maybe this is the whole overarching theme of the day is meditation. I think we should close with a meditation. So we could maybe sit quietly and just pay attention to attachment and letting go, because it's so much of it is how we conceive of it, or how we it's like the meditation was just We pay attention. It's actually incredibly simple. Just pay attention to one in-breath, and then you pay attention to one out-breath. You don't have to attach to the in-breath. Think, oh, I just want in-breaths. Those out-breaths are really terrible. It's this thing, this sort of present with awareness and attention. And you pick it up, you hold it skillfully, and you let it go. And whether it's the breath, or whether it's a thought, whether it's a mood, they're picked up and known with awareness, and they're let go with relinquishment and renunciation. And ease, clarity comes from that. So we can just sit quietly. usually it's kind of a good thing, but maybe we could end with chant the Buddha's words in loving kindness. Good way to end. I don't know what page it's on. 36 or 37 for those. Hmm? 37 in English, yeah. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another, nor despise any being in any state, or ill will, wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Okay, another Upāsika day down. I guess the next big thing that's happening at Abhayagiri is Katina. It's October October 15th, for those who are interested to join. It's a large gathering and opportunity for making offerings, offering cloth requisites, joining in with the general celebration, and there'll be the talk in the afternoon after the ceremony. We have Ajahn Jayanto visiting here, so see if we can squeeze a talk out of him. And so that's, I think that's the next thing, October 15th. Anything else? Any announcements? I don't think so. Okay. About half an hour, if anybody's around, I'll be take my tea over in the hall if anybody wants to join, have any more questions. I'll be over there. Yeah, about half an hour.